This is Matt Moneymaker with the BFRO, the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. This video is for BFRO Report 74308 from Orange County, Florida, June 26, 2021. This is a Class B report. In other words, it was not a visual encounter. Rather, sounds were heard that are very distinctive for Sasquatches, and in this case, they were heard by two witnesses. The two witnesses heard loud wood knocks coming from two different directions and distances, as if the noisemakers were signaling and replying to each other, which is very characteristic of Sasquatches. Wood knocks made by Sasquatches sound similar to a baseball bat hit very hard against a tree trunk. This occurred in a large swampy nature preserve, Rock Springs Run, which is roughly 20 miles north of Orlando as the crow flies. I will read the report from the witnesses, then play the recording of my phone interview with them. This report is significant because of the location. It is within 2 miles of the Florida National Scenic Trail. There are many reported visual and auditory encounters within a few miles of that trail, suggesting that Sasquatches may be using parts of that trail to connect to various greenbelts within the state. The same pattern occurs across the country near the Appalachian Trail, the Buckeye Trail, the Continental Divide Trail, and the Pacific Crest Trail. The wife, Danielle, writes, "My husband and I are from California and new to Florida. We wanted to explore some Florida forest land. We happened upon the Rock Springs Run State Reserve. We drove onto a dirt road and parked off to the side. We got out and just started walking around. Right away, we saw a lot of vultures and groups of white-tailed deer. The area was buzzing with wildlife and sounds we didn't recognize. We wanted to walk deeper into the trees, which would take us down to a lower terrain, but even with our hiking clothes and shoes, it turned out to be too much for us. We're very healthy and active, but it didn't seem like a fun idea. There were just too many wet, swampy areas of ground, and it turned out to be almost impossible, and we weren't sure if we wanted to be struggling through alligator territory. We made our way back up to a dirt path, and that's when we started hearing the banging sound. At first we thought it was a person out there doing something, but then the same sound started coming from another direction, maybe a quarter mile from the first one. It sounded like they were hitting trees with a baseball bat or a big piece of wood. It continued to go back and forth from one spot to another. It was one of those things that didn't seem weird at first until you stopped to think about it. No animals do that, and why would people go way out there and begin hitting trees in the swamp and then take turns doing it? We just couldn't fathom what the purpose would be. We listened, then walked back to the car and left. This occurred around 5 p.m. It was light out with mixed clouds and sun."
Okay, my name is Twy, and my wife's name is Danielle. And on the June 26, 2021, I would guess about 20 miles north of Orlando, we were traveling on Highway 46, and we wanted to pull over and kind of check out and look for alligators. So we're traveling, it was west or eastbound on 46 when we came to Rock Spring Run Reserve, and we saw an entrance. So we definitely thought to turn in there going southbound on 433. And so we're driving kind of slow because it's kind of woody and stuff like that. And then we saw a little like a little swampy area. So we stopped, got out of the car, and then started walking and see what we could actually see in this area, because we're looking for alligators.
Yeah, like we saw a group of white-tailed deer, and that's what made us stop the car, because we're basically just driving down this dirt road into the forest, which that's something we would normally do. Like whenever we're driving somewhere, we try to go into kind of an unincorporated or woodsy area and just get out and walk around and explore.
Yeah, it's so beautiful, and you never know what you're going to see. So
right, yeah, and we saw a couple groups of white-tailed deer and a lot of vultures, and we really we wanted to see some alligator because we had just moved to Florida like a year ago at this point, but yeah, at that point we had just moved here a couple months ago.
And if you zoom in on the map, you can see where it says Rock Springs, but that first little body of water on the left, if you're traveling south, that's where we parked the car, the small little body of water on the left. Yeah, if you're traveling south. So we pulled over next to that, and then we started walking down that road, probably walked a mile and a half down that road, left our car there, and that's when we started hearing something really weird.
Yeah, well, actually, we tried to walk out into the green area, which was
okay. Wait, let's guide me in a little bit better. We're looking at 433 going south into Rock Run State Park. So you're going south on that. You're saying a body of water on the left side.
The one with the donut hole in it on the right, the tiny little one. It's the left. It's your right, but it's our left. Okay. We're going southbound.
It's the left.
There you go.
Is that it? I'm zooming in on right now.
We parked right there.
Okay. I'm going to switch to aerial. Great.
Oh, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so whereabouts do you think
that was actually filled with water when we parked there?
That kind of donut thing.
Yeah, that thing right there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just after that, let's see. Yeah, it was probably just right where that 430. Well, yeah, right where your mouse is, right there.
Okay, yeah. right where the mouse is right now.
Yeah, right there. Because we're looking for alligators in that one spot right there, and then we walked down just a little bit further before the next little road that I see now, but I didn't see it then.
Yeah.
But yeah, right there. Yes. So when we then we heard something kind of odd because we were listening for some type of sound of the alligators, but then we started hearing frogs, like bullfrogs, and then there was this like knocking sound.
Yeah, it was. I mean, and we've hiked around, like I said, like we stop in many areas as we can and hike around, and we've heard woodpeckers like through many states and through a lot of California.
Yeah, and this wasn't that.
And no, it was not. It was
and it was from
woodpeckers are more of like a tap 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 tap, and this was more like a.
This is more like a
knock with a space and then knock.
Like that, and then after that one, we were looking that way, and then there came the same or a different,
like it started
same
off,
type of thing, but further away.
It started off to the right of us, and a little bit, which was it was louder because it was closer to us, and then it continued over to the left of us, but a lot farther away, and it started like immediately after after the first one, which was close to us, and then the farther one started in, and it went like about 9.
Okay, so orient me as we're looking at this map.
Can you see my mouse?
Okay.
No, I can't see your mouse.
Oh,
okay, you're in the right spot right now. Okay, that was where the second one was, right there where you're at.
Okay, where was the first one? On which side of the road as you're facing the map?
It's same side. But just lower, let's go lower an inch.
Like is it
right there.
Going, more
closer
towards
to the street,
433, but not past 433. Not past Highway 433.
So where the mouse is now, it was around in there with higher. The first ones were in here.
Yeah, first one's more closer to the road, and the second one's a little farther back. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so first one around here, and the answer was back in here.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And it actually it went on a few times. Like we would hear maybe about 3 from the closer location, and then 3 from the farther location, and then maybe 40 seconds would go by quietly, and then it would start again with like basically like bang, and then bang, bang, like that from the closer location. Then it would continue from the farther location to our left, and it did that like probably back and forth that way for maybe 3 minutes or something straight. Yeah, and we basically it was surprising because we had already attempted to walk out into that area, and
it was too much.
Chose not to because even though like we've trudged through a lot of stuff without a problem, but this was like the kind of stuff you would get stuck in, and not to mention it's alligator territory.
Yeah.
And we just weren't sure if we wanted to get into that, or if we had the right equipment for that, with just tennis shoes and pants.
So you had mentioned when I talked to you earlier that when you got out of the car, you had made some kind of sound, like a bird sound, because you saw birds.
Okay, this guy.
That's me.
Whenever he sees like any bird, basically larger than a crow, he makes a bird call out. It sounds kind of like caw.
Yeah, that's it. It's from the three amigos. Caw, caw.
Yeah, he's basically doing it as a joke, but he does it.
Well, do your best imitation of the sound you made.
Yes, when I got out of the car, we want to see something, and I always like to, start instigating something. So I go, why not make a noise that someone, will come? Maybe an alligator will come or something, right? So I get out of the car, joking around. I'm like, caw, caw, like that. And then, of course, my wife gets embarrassed, but I'm waiting for something to happen. So anyway, that's what happened when we got out of the car, and then we started exploring.
Okay, and there was no other cars on the road, as I understand.
No, that we were the only people out there. No other cars.
No, nothing. Mm-hmm. Nothing but just the buzzing of nature, all kinds of nature sounds.
And so, how long after you made that loud bird sound did you hear the first knock? Roughly, what was the interval?
It's hard to estimate because first we kind of attempted a couple of different directions of walking into the lower elevation of where all the thickness was, and I guess we couldn't really do it and ended up going back to a dirt road, and then I guess it was about probably maybe 4 or 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'd say probably 5 minutes.
Okay, yeah.
But then again, I don't know how many times I make that noise because I make it a lot. I'm just joking around. Yeah. But I do remember doing it out there. Yeah.
Twice or something.
Okay, so those dotted lines we see crossing 433, those are not dirt roads themselves. Those are just trails, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and when
I
say dirt road, I mean maybe not a dirt road. It was just kind of like a trail. Yeah, just basically an area that you could actually walk through as opposed to just something you couldn't walk through.
Okay, so in other words, there's no other place that you'd be able to leave a car except on 433.
Right. That's exactly right.
That's right.
So you would know if you're out there by yourselves.
Yeah, you could see it's kind of a straight road except for that one little bend. And once we went around that bend, what you see right there at the top, is it straightens out. It straightens out for a long time. So we could see anybody all the way down there, and we had just turned that corner, so there was no one behind us, and no one ever came up. And you could hear pretty well out there. So there was no car that, and I think it's like a gravelly type of thing. So we would have heard something if a car was coming.
Yeah.
Do you remember, it may sound irrelevant, but it's not. Was there a lot of mosquitoes?
I guess there probably were.
I think we actually
generally are.
I think we actually sprayed when you got out of the car, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because
we usually do.
We spray before we go into that kind of stuff, and we normally do, and I can't imagine us not doing that spraying.
Right.
Okay, so you would have done that automatically.
Yeah, that's it.
Rather than wait to get bit and before you do
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So you're hearing the knocks go back and forth, and again, give me a sense of compare that to what other sounds that you would be able to hear, and how you knew that. You were saying it was a heavy knock, like a baseball bat against a tree.
Yeah. Yeah.
And from what I remember, it sounded like a two like this, and then wait, and then the other one sounded more like just 3 steady, like that.
Okay. And do you think you're in an elevated position on the road, I suppose, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit elevated over the, yeah.
Do you think it was possible from the distance and the direction that the sound was coming from? Do you think it's possible that thing could have seen through the trees and seen you standing on the edge of the road?
I'm not really sure. I guess it would just depend on where.
Well, we're up top. If we're higher than it, maybe it could have, because Um,
But you
I
would
don't
have
know.
been,
I can
could
see
it have heard you talking?
Yeah, before that, yeah, because we were talking
Maybe.
loud
Well, it,
before that.
I, it
loud
would have
before that.
heard him do that bird sound.
Okay.
But we were talking loud before that.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, because I was making jokes about where's all the alligators at and stuff like that.
Yeah, because I'm thinking from its position where it was making the sounds, if it was quiet over there, and if you had been over there, would you have been able to hear the people, I mean, yourself making that?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's
there's
important.
also car doors shutting was something else I didn't think about, which,
Yeah,
would make sound.
that's important behaviorally, because we've known from and been doing this a long time, and we've been out places where we've just hung around very quietly for hours not making a sound to hear what kind of sounds will happen spontaneously. And you will hear knocks spontaneously without having to incite them or provoke them or whatever. They will do those sounds. But there's been many other occasions where we knew that, okay, they'll if we make like knocks or vocalizations, sometimes if you make a knock, they'll respond with a knock. Sometimes you make a vocalization and they'll respond with a knock. But other times, if you're just walking into the area and they hear either a car door slam or people talking or whatever, it seems like they're reacting to that. And this sounds like one of those situations where the one that's closer is knocking to almost give a warning to let another one know that there's intruders.
That makes sense.
That there's people nearby. The first time I ever heard knocks, that's what happened. There was 3 guys going up a trail. This was actually in the mountains of Ventura County, up in Los Padres National Forest. And we had gone up there because a couple of guys had a sighting up there. And we came across a fresh track crossing a trail, and it was heading down in the direction down into this creek gorge that was probably about 150 yards down and completely brushed in. And we heard knocks coming out of there. And I remember distinctly, it was a series of 3 knocks, and there was 3 of us. And so it was making 3 knocks. And then as we started to go, because we thought it was the first time I had ever not only ever heard it, but it was the first time I had never even heard of that. Nobody had talked about knocks at that time. This was in the 80s. And we kept going up the trail, and we heard something answering it, something at least a quarter mile further up this creek bed, answering it, like replying to it. And it was clear we got the sense of one is making a sound down here, another one, and it just makes sense. It's like, what, we have 2 hermits way out. I mean, this was like an 8-hour backpack to get into this area. And so we're like, there's people down in there chopping wood down here. And we didn't know. And it took a long while later to realize, Bigfoots do that. They make these knocking sounds. And it sounds like either somebody chopping wood or somebody hitting a bat against a tree. And they're doing it there's a few different reasons we think they do it. Sometimes we think they're trying to push deer. Like humans will knock against trees when they do a deer drive. And I think the only place in the United States I think they still regularly do that is parts of Vermont. Well, hunters will try to flush deer out of a tract of woods by like separating themselves by about 100 feet or 200 feet, and they'll bang against trees as they're all moving through in a line, and that will make the deer move. That will like flush the deer out into toward where there'd be other hunters. So it could be that the Sasquatches will do the same thing. They'll drive deer in a certain direction, and they'll use knocks to do that. And in other situations, it seems like they were using knocks just to signal to each other as to where they are. So there could be they can use knocks in a few different contexts. So we try to figure out, like, okay, what was why would it have been doing it in this situation? And the answer, I think it was because it probably heard you 2 up on the road, and you just happened to stop in a place where one was not far away.
Right. And that's interesting. You said how they could do it as a warning, and how you had heard it before where there were 3 of you and you heard 3 knocks, because the first knock we heard that was the closest to us was 2 knocks, and there were 2 of us.
Wow.
So
yeah, it was probably signaling to another one that there's 2 people nearby.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see further to the east of where you were, it looks like there's a farm field or a field that had been cut. And I can't tell if the trees that were growing back are pines or oaks, but there's a particularly dense stand of thick oaks kind of a bit further east, which now I'm on the map screen, you'll see I'm zooming down into that.
Yeah, I see that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is almost certainly big, thick oaks, which almost certainly drop a lot of acorns. And so that area would be a magnet for deer. And I can't tell whether or not if there's springs where they would be moving water anywhere around here, because I know that they'll, they, like other animals, like to drink clean water as opposed to like kind of algae ponds. But sometimes there are what just look like stagnant swampy ponds that are actually spring upwellings in Florida.
There are definitely a lot of deer right in that area. We saw them, a lot of white.
Oh, you did? That's what I was going to ask. So you saw deer that day from the road?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, from that road, we saw patches of white-tailed deer.
Ah, okay. And that's why there would be Bigfoots. That ultimately, that's why, because they'll forage off a lot of things. They may go after a lot of different animal species, but the main staple that determines where they want to be is going to be white-tailed deer. And that is a deer area you're looking at there.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Okay, so you heard the knocks, and then you talked about it. And what did you say among each other about it as you were listening?
Well, I know that Danielle was pretty surprised. They're like, wait, listen, because she heard the first one. And she's like, did you hear that? And then we were like, both, like, because obviously when she's that serious, we all stopped talking. And then we listened.
I think it was happening for a little bit before we even paid attention to it, because we were listening to these other sounds, like these grunts and snort kind of sounds like that we weren't really familiar with. I don't know really what it was, but might have been like some different type of frog than we're used to, because we were from California and moved to Florida. But we were listening for that and kind of like wondering if there were alligator around and trying to listen for those kind of sounds before we started honing in on the knocking, which at that point it was kind of just like it just started to seem strange when you started to think about what is doing that, because no animal is knocking on a tree in that manner, not a bird. And the knocks were just too deep and too spaced apart, and also taking turns basically from 2 different directions, like knock, knock, and then knock, 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 knock from a different direction. And it just the fact like how the area is so dense and so swampy, it's not the area where people would go to chop down wood or anything. Like they would go to the edge of a dry area where you could easily chop something down and take it away without having to trudge through swamp. So
it seems like you had the intuitive sense that I did on several occasions, and especially that first time, that I was hearing something was making such a loud, powerful knock that it had to be something with an arm and a hand that was swinging something really hard against a tree or another piece of wood, but not as opposed to a woodpecker or something falling out of a tree on the ground, or sometimes there's frogs that'll make it sound.
It was definitely a loud banging sound.
Excellent. Yeah. And what that does is that narrows it down to 2 possibilities. That's because it's an arm with a hand. So that means it's either a human or it's a Sasquatch. And the likelihood of 2 people out there just messing around, making knock sounds in the woods is really, it's just that's not going to be the case. and it's almost
not where we were looking. It was just I wouldn't walk over there.
No. And if two people did go out there, I mean, I guess they possibly could, but they would be trudging through a lot of crap, and I don't think they would separate from one another that far apart and then communicate by hitting trees.
So you're saying that area that we see that I'm going to zoom in on, which looks dry right now, was actually filled with water at the time.
Yeah, it was filled with water. Yeah,
filled with water in enough areas that, I mean,
we couldn't go through.
We couldn't find a dry patch to get through.
It wasn't wet, but it was sludgy.
Sludgy, sludgy mixed with like many small bodies of water. Like when you look at it, you basically can't tell what is deep and what isn't practically until
so we wouldn't even have the opportunity to walk that way to try to get closer because we couldn't get through it.
Yeah, I mean, any steps we took, we were already sludging into wet, mucky ground.
Okay, so you discussed it amongst yourself. You tried to go down there, you couldn't. You heard the sounds. You were discussing it amongst yourself. And again, for people to orient them, this was at what time of day and what were the lighting conditions?
It was nice.
It was like 6 p.m., but not not dark.
Yeah, it wasn't
6 p.m. 6 p.m. in the summertime, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could see well.
Okay, and you could see well. The sky was lit, and so anything out there would have been able to see you too.
Totally,
for sure. Yeah, it looked like just pure daylight at the time.
Pure daylight, but it was more like
a
couple more hours left of daylight.
Yeah.
And about the deer, you obviously saw them before that point as you were coming in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Further up the road, and do you remember? Were they on both sides of the road, or
they were on the opposite side of the road?
Right. They were on the opposite side, which was maybe slightly higher elevation than the lower side. I don't know, but they were running on the
it seemed like the right side was higher than the left side was lower.
Okay. Well, this is great. And, at first I thought it was more recent, but you just sent the report in recently. But the incident happened in August. And just as
June.
June. It was June. Okay. Yeah. And just so, because this is almost like a survey question, why did you wait so long? Of course, most people, I don't even know if I wasn't interested in the subject, if I would send in a report at all. So it's not like you did something wrong, but why did you wait until now?
Not quite sure. I think, I don't know. It just kind of stayed on my mind for a while. I guess the more I thought about it, the more
Did you see something on TV that made you think, hey, I'm going to send that in?
Well, when did you send it in?
I just sent it in.
Okay. That's because we were coming back from another one of our trips and with our son. And we were telling him the story about it. And so we happened to be going through a different area. And so we're like, dude, let's go down this road. We try to find weird roads in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
So we took him down there. We were looking at it. That's probably why she's all, oh my gosh. And then
I started telling him about it. And then also we had recently been through an area in Florida where they have wild macaw monkeys, which kind of got me, thinking of it.
Yeah. And neither of you were aware of like the history of reports to the north of there and to the south.
No,
not
at all.
No.
Yeah. Because you're not far north of there is the Alexander Springs area. And then further to the southwest, there's the Green Swamp. These are areas where there has been a lot of sightings over the years. Green Swamp, that whole part of Ocala. When we did expeditions, that's where we would go. We'd actually camp, stay in the Alexander Springs campground, and then head out from there to different areas. Or we would stay down in the Green Swamp. We'd find dispersed camping them there and go up to Rich Loam Wildlife Management Area, because that's where, but it was only under, it isn't like they were there in both places all the time. It seemed like, when the conditions were right, they would be around, because after a while we developed kind of a network of people who were close enough by that they could go check it out. every so often, and they weren't always hearing them. And that makes sense because, I mean, if these things were to stay at the same place constantly and not move, eventually people would figure it out and they would have been quote unquote discovered or at least photographed more. But if like they come and hang around and then they move on as if they're following deer, like predators will do. And when predators are coming around deer, the deer tend to move on. They don't stay in the same place. That relationship kind of pushes the deer around. And so they'll move to different areas. So there could be that the Sasquatches, the same ones, are still there. Or it could be that they've gone up to Seminole State Forest, or up there to the Wekiva, it looks like Wekiva River Park Reserve. And on a map, you see so many farmlands around it, and I'm zooming out on the aerial. You see all these light areas, and people may think, oh, that's all development in city. And no, it isn't. A lot of those light areas are just grazing fields, but they're not, they're not housing tracts. So this is a very open area. The deer can move, around so much of it. The only thing the deer are going to be really blocked from doing is going straight south into the suburbs of Orlando. But they could certainly go north into Ocala, and they'd be able to work their way through over past Lake Dora and then straight down into the Green Swamp. And what we do suspect, again, we've been following this for a long time, so we've seen a pattern of there being sightings very close to the Pacific Crest Trail and the Continental Divide Trail and the Appalachian Trail. And it seems to be a pattern along the Florida Trail, which isn't just one. There's actually the Florida Trail there's a couple different ways that they go. But I bet if I looked at a map, I'll bet the Florida Trail comes pretty close to here, or it would at least bring them into a green belt that connects to a green belt to the north of there, such that they could follow the Florida Trail from some other part of Ocala and then connect into the green belt and then eventually come down into this reserve, just like the deer would do. Mm-hmm. So there's ways of getting around. But anyway, yeah, I do think it's an important report, and I think it's an important location, and I think it's a good place for other people to go check out. And I hope that if they were to go in there, they wouldn't make the mistake that other people do. They see what we've done on TV, and they'll go in and completely overdo it with howls or knocks. And that just, the way you do it properly with knocks is you just tease them a little bit. You make a couple of really loud knock sounds, and then you wait. And what that forces them to do is, since they're hearing that sound, and they can't, if they're hearing it from a distance, they can't immediately tell how far away it is or what direction it is. So they then have to make a sound themselves to try to elicit another response so they can hone in on the direction. But if you're what other people will do, and I remember this in the Green Swamp one time, I was there with a guy who was new to the group, and he had thought he knew what he was doing. He said he would go out and do some knocks. And then when we camped with him, his way of doing knocks at night was he would just walk 10, 15 feet away from the blazing campfire under full illumination, and then just sit there and continually bang against a tree. And when we saw that, we were just aghast, just saying, not only do you not know what you're doing, but you could have messed it up here, because if they hear, they would have heard that, and they would have walked in the dark right up close enough to see that it's a human doing it.
Exactly.
Without having to make a sound, they just followed, because he's going bang, 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 and they just follow it right to him. They see him standing in the firelight. And then if we come back there to this place again with him a month later, and if we try and do knocks, then they're not going to come around or make a response because they know it's humans.
Exactly. So that location is ruined, and that, yeah.
Right. So when you go in and do a knock, you have to be completely, if you're doing it the right way, you park your car, You don't slam the door. You close it quietly. You don't talk loud, and you walk a good long way away from that vehicle. And then you go into the woods so that you're not going to be visible from a distance, but you still want to be up as high as you can so your sound will propagate as far as possible. In other words, not down in a ditch. You want to be pretty high, and then do one really loud as you can, a big bang, or at most two of them. And then you wait a good 15 minutes of silence. Because if they were to hear that from a distance, you figure they're not walking around with something in their hand ready to knock. They're going to look, they'll either do a vocal thing or they'll look around for something to knock with and then kind of make their way toward you. So you give them a long time to respond. And if nothing happens about 15 minutes later, then you do another couple of big knocks. And then wait again for at least another 5 minutes. So since knock sounds do not carry as far as loud vocals, you do the knocks first. And then you would step up to trying and doing a vocalization. And then again, it's the same principle. You don't just keep doing it and doing it and doing it and make it easy for the thing to come right to you. You do it just enough to entice the thing to make its own sound, to try to figure out where you are. Anyway, that's the proper way to do it. And I hope if people go down there and try to get a response, first of all, they won't do this in the daytime at all. They should do it after dark, so that they're not spotted by the thing. And the advantage of doing it after dark also is when they approach, they come much closer in the dark than they do it during the daytime. And one of the questions people had always frequently asked us at town halls and afterwards at Finding Bigfoot, they say, why wouldn't you guys, they say there were so many sightings during the daytime, why didn't you guys go out looking during the day? And why do you go out at night instead of the day? And we'd always have to end up explaining just like the reason why you go out and make sounds at night is because they can't see you as easily, and they feel much more confident coming really close to you under the cover of darkness, because they seem to know that humans can't see as well in the dark, and they just feel much more comfortable in the dark coming up within, sometimes 20 feet of you if it's a thick enough forest. So nighttime is the best time to do either of those things. Much more likely that you're going to hear responses, and much more likely that you're going to have an approach.
Interesting. Yeah, Matt, thanks for letting us, share our experience, and, with you. And I hope this is going to be something that's interesting to people. And, thanks for doing what you do.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. And do let me know if you ever head back there.
All right. Take care, man.